Video.
Oh, good evening, everybody. Recording is in progress. We'll make a start. Welcome to this event, the role of HR in saving the planet. A bit different to some of the HR sessions we've run for the local branch. My name's John Kenny, the Midland Area Partnership Facilitator and member of the Leicestershire Committee. Just a few introductions before we get onto the main topic and what could be more topical than this subject on this particular day. So you'll see from the slide that you're hopefully all seeing at the moment, we've got guest speakers. First of all, Tony Barradell from the Leicestershire Committee. A big thank you to Tony particularly, because he championed getting this subject onto our agenda and indeed more onto the CIPD agenda. So thank you for that, Tony. We're also got joining us Pete Winchester and Victoria Stuart. The plan is that I'm going to hand over in a few minutes or so to Tony, who will lead us through the presentations, which will be short and sharp, and then time for us to talk at the end and get some of your views. So just through a bit of admin, first of all, some of these slides you may have seen before. Thank you, Eleanor. In terms of connecting with us and keeping the conversations going, the LinkedIn group is there, and you can also connect with us through the local branch. I suspect we may have people from outside the branch, which is happening a lot with local branches at the moment. Special welcome to Tina Russell and John Berry from the CIPD headquarters in Wimbledon, who are joining us because they're really interested. They're driving the review of the professional code of conduct, which some of you may know about, and sustainability, and the whole issue tonight is very closely linked in to our professional standards. So welcome to them as well. Okay, Eleanor, thank you. As you see there, as usual, we're going to be muted, but we are going to go into breakout rooms towards the end, give you a chance to put your views across. And in the meantime, please do use the chat facility. Took me a little while to get over the kind of, oh, it's disrespectful using chat when I'm supposed to be listening to speakers. But I really enjoy that because I like to keep involved and feel, and you can get involved, whereas you can't necessarily in a meeting keep jumping into things. So we will send details afterwards. Also a survey monkey for you to let us know what you think of the session. And just put your name up on the participant list so we can contact you afterwards. Okay, Eleanor, thank you. Bit of plugging for and marketing for future events, self-explanatory there. As you know, a variety of meetings we hold. The Independence Group is back meeting live. They meet this Friday at the Fieldhead Hotel. Other events, some local focus groups, and what I'm particularly interested in, the Midlands L&D event, which will involve L&D practitioners from across the Midlands region. And for those of you that are students listening to us tonight, you'd be more than welcome to the online session on the 24th of November, just again an hour and a quarter to welcome you to CIPD and show you some of the things that are available through CIPD. Okay, thanks, Eleanor. Which leads nicely into a slide that you may or may not have seen. A lot of publicity to CIPD members, just continually kind of drip feeding the benefits of the being a member of the CIPD community and some of the things that you can get through it. And again, we reinforce this through the branch meetings. Okay. So in terms of my bit, that's all from me. Enjoy the session, get involved, and we will be talking action at some stage. So over to you, Tony, and thanks again for your driving this agenda for us.
Thanks, John. Okay, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to start off in a bit of an unusual way, really, which is to make an apology. I've got you here under false pretenses. Because what I put on the invite was HR's role in saving the planet. And I was reminded by seeing one of the short videos that was played at the ACE event last week, those of you that went to Manchester, that actually what we're talking about here is not saving the planet. The planet will carry on fine without us. The planet will keep on going. So what we're actually talking about here is saving the world as we know it. And the world as we know it is undergoing some significant challenges. I think we've moved on from sort of needing to talk about this. We know about the fires in different parts of the world, in Australia and America recently. We know about the floods that happened in Europe earlier this year. Drought is an ongoing problem across many regions of the world, including South Africa. And I think that might be picked up later on. So the big story is we know about these things. So how about the reaction of international community? Eleanor? The next slide, please. Well, again, I think you would be a strange person if you weren't aware of what's going on at the moment up in Glasgow, where the United Nations COP26 conference is actually taking place. It's been in the news for quite a while. It's been in the news all the time over the last couple of weeks. What are they doing there? Well, you know, we're getting some mixed messages, I guess. We're getting some encouraging messages. So things last week around agreements across world governments around forestation and stopping the deforestation that's taking place. We got some agreements around methane, reducing that, which is one of the key greenhouse gases. So there's various good things going on. There's a strong, ambitious draft agreement that's being thrashed out at the moment by negotiators from various governments up there. And what we're also hearing sort of from the sidelines is it's still not enough. The different commitments that people are actually making are not going to be enough to fulfill the objectives that we're looking for. So it's a tricky old situation, but as John mentioned, it's certainly one that is really, really current for everyone here today. Eleanor, please. In terms of what they are trying to achieve with the COP26, well, it's to keep that temperature rise down to, where possible, 1.5 degrees above where it was at the start of the century. It's something that I hadn't realised really until sort of becoming more involved in this, is how much the temperature has already risen. We're over 1.1 degree warmer now than we were. So what we're talking about is not keeping a check over an extra 1.1, it's keeping a check over an extra 0.04 that we're looking at, which is not a lot of headroom. So I think there's some big stuff that's actually got to take place. And this is where the scientists are coming in and suggesting that there's not enough on the table at the moment. Adapt and protect communities and habitats. Well, global warming is not the only thing that is sort of at fault here. If anyone was with me about 4 or 5 months ago, when I was leading a session at the Leicestershire AGM, I introduced the planetary boundaries model, and that is suggesting that there's various things that human beings are doing, which is causing great harm to the whole ecosystem of the world. So the planet will survive, but our part in it, that's the thing that's under question here. So I think various steps that have to be taken to actually preserve natural habitats. Finance is an important part of any picture. Being an ex-banker, I'm sort of well aware of that the money's got to be moving in the right directions, and different things are happening there to hopefully swing money out of dirty technology into clean technology. And again, we might hear more of that as we go through this evening. And I think the other final point there is the working all together to deliver. And that's the one that I have cunningly highlighted. And if Eleanor can advance the next slide one, there we go, it's in red. We've got to work together to deliver these things. And I think working together is the international community working together. The different governments across the world have got to work together. They will set the framework, they will set policies, they will set regulations, they'll set legislation that are going to help drive us in the right direction. But those things only happen if things happen. And that's going to take not just government action to actually make that come true. It's going to take action by individual citizens. I think we've all, as individuals, got to consider our own position, our own contribution towards the going in the wrong direction, and what might we do to bring that in a better direction. And from my perspective of being involved with the HR community for the last 25 years or so, it's the recognition that the organisations are the third piece in that. It's got to be governments, it's got to be individuals, and it's got to be organisations. And this is where I think HR has got the opportunity to actually cut in here, to actually take a big place in making sure that we can try and do something collectively that's going to help towards these goals. So Eleanor, the next slide, please. Again, those of you that were with us in the AGM in the summer might recognise some figures that we put up at that particular meeting. We did a survey of those attending. It was not a vast survey, you know, I'm not claiming to be Maury or anything, but we got a number of interesting responses that, that sort of investigated a little bit this area. And at the time, it was a case of saying that sustainability, climate change was talked about in the organisations, and most organisations were talking about it. I would like to think that what's going on over the last month or so, that's going to be almost all organisations somewhere are talking about it. Is it taken seriously? Well, again, I hope it is taken seriously. There was quite a high figure in that survey in the summer, and I would hope that that figure is going to be increasing. Has your organisation taken measures? Well, we've got 3/4 of organisations that when the people were represented here said that they had taken some measure, and that was a good thing. So again, most, you know, we've got a majority moving forward and taking at least some steps. So how about HR's role? Again, that's indicated on the next slide, please, Eleanor. So this is where I sort of wanted to, you know, exert a little leverage here. This is a thinking that was HR involved in the sustainability initiatives? And here we've got not such a great set of figures. Less than 1 in 5 people represented in this very small survey said that HR department was involved a lot. Involved a little, yeah, majority of people were involved a little, not at all, 25%. And I think for me, that was one of the keys for me to sort of lay on this extra event for you this evening. And in terms of whether people thought they should be involved, well, yes, that's where we got a great big whopping 94% of the people just on this survey that indicated that they would like to, they thought they should be involved with this. So this is where I'm hoping this event will sort of hit home, in that we've moved on from saying, is climate changing? Yeah. We've moved on from saying, yes, some actions being taken at sort of top level with the COP conference going on. Is it enough? Don't know, but at least stuff is happening. So how about now getting the organisations to follow suit? What about the actions that can be actually taken by HR professionals? And this is why I'm delighted to have done a bit of arm twisting and got a couple of my colleagues in the HR community to come and give their story, really, a little bit of what's been happening in their companies. Because it's all very well for me to say with my company, which employs exactly 1 person, what to do to make things a bit better. But I'd really like to hear from organisations much bigger in scale and size, and therefore of much greater importance in this. So we've got 2 speakers for you tonight. Each will give hopefully about 10 minutes worth of information about the company. We can perhaps take 1 or 2 questions from each of the speakers at that time. And then I'd like to move on and invite you to see what the actions that you can take following this. So at this point, what I'm going to do is hand over to Pete as our first speaker. I'm sure he will be able to introduce himself very well and tell us about the journey his company is actually on. Oh, sorry, I've got a bit more to tell you, haven't I? My apologies. I was going to say a little bit about what CIPD is doing. That's something that I hope that lots of people have actually picked up on. Lots of people have already seen a document that was published in the summer by the CIPD that was encouraging people to move into this area of sustainability. Also, there was a really interesting session at the ACE event last week that I was able to watch online, and that was by a lady called Marka Hook, and she was at the end interviewed by Peter Cheese. And I think it's something that has really moved up the CIPD agenda. But let's hear now, enough of me talking, let's hear from Pete, and let's move on to see what people are actually doing in the real world there. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Good evening, everyone. I thought tonight what I would do is I'd just go through a few slides, touch on why sustainability is a priority for our business, and also to talk to some of our tangible HR environmental initiatives and some of the lessons we've learned along the way. I think it's fair to say we're on a bit of a journey as an organisation, and we've found it quite an interesting process. And like I say, I'll just go through some of the things we've picked up and identified as we've gone through this. Go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So our parent company is the Life Healthcare Group, and they are a large South African healthcare services provider, and they are listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And in South Africa, Life Healthcare is a very well recognised corporate brand. In 2016, Life Healthcare acquired the Alliance Medical Group, which at the time was a mid-sized private equity-owned diagnostic imaging provider across Europe. And that was the company that I worked for at the time. And as you might expect, there's quite a big cultural difference between a very well-known listed South African corporate that employs 25,000 plus employees and an under-the-radar private equity-owned SME type business that employs in the region of 2,000 employees, particularly in respect of some corporate governance issues, such as environmental and social issues. Can I have the next slide, please, Eleanor? Thank you. So if I just give you an example, in South Africa, Life Healthcare as a listed business is required to operate a board-level social and ethics committee, and also to produce an annual publicly available integrated report, which touches on everything that isn't financial across the business. Now, both of those, the committee and the report, have to talk to sustainability issues for Life Healthcare. And as a result of that, we've also got sustainability as a core strategic pillar across our business. Now, prior to the acquisition, none of this applied to us as Alliance Medical in our European business. Can we just go to the next slide, please, Anna? Thank you. But I think, and Tony touched on this previously, one of the things that's very real in Life Healthcare in South Africa is governance isn't the only driver of environmental considerations. You know, they face very real day-to-day environmental issues. And a key one for us relates to water shortages, which unfortunately are increasingly common in South Africa. And it's partly down to infrastructure, but it's also partly down to environmental issues. And the last 12 months have seen us having to sink boreholes or wells, essentially, in some of our hospital grounds, just to be able to guarantee a water supply so we can keep the hospital open and continue to provide patient services. So we've also got a really strong social environmental principle in operation across our business. Next slide, please. So post-acquisition, our Alliance Medical's environmental journey as part of the Life Healthcare Group started in 2016, and we were asked to contribute to the group's annual integrated report. But even though the environment was a feature of our business, and particularly in respect of our public sector customer base, and we had many examples of environmental initiatives, we didn't actually invest any time or resources in pulling them together into one place. And as a result of that, I think we submitted a maximum of 2 paragraphs in total into the integrated report from 2016 to 2020, which with hindsight wasn't really acceptable. But in 2020, that all changed. So in 2020, 2 of our senior team were invited to attend the board Social and Ethics Committee with a requirement to report back on sustainability issues in Alliance Medical. And as one of those 2 people, I can speak firsthand about how uncomfortable it was when we weren't able to provide a proper report on our status and our progress. which you know, let's be honest, wasn't really a nice place to be as a sort of, you know, an attendee at that committee. But what it did do is it did kickstart the prioritisation of environmental issues, and since then we've really stepped up and we've taken a number of actions. So we've assigned resources, we've collated existing good practice, we've conducted gap analyses, we've identified future initiatives, and we've assigned senior management accountability across the business. And if I look forward, we've now got plans in place to develop some regional sustainability strategies and to integrate sustainability into our performance management and reward processes. Next slide, please, Donna. Thank you. And building on that, what we've also done is we've reviewed our HR initiatives against the CIPD environmental model. And we've arrived at this list here as a starting point. And I would really recommend that you each do this for your organisation, because we found it really enlightening. And what we found is that we already had some initiatives, so those that are in black on the left-hand side, which, if we're honest, had really been introduced for commercial reasons, but which could equally be termed in or framed in positive environmental terms. So as an example, our mobile logistics teams have always had an objective to minimise the movement of our mobile imaging units and the travel time of our mobile workforce, pretty much with the aim to reduce costs. But there's also an environmental benefit to doing this. And we've come to the conclusion that it's actually okay to have multiple reasons to introduce initiatives. So if an HR initiative can be both commercially beneficial and environmentally friendly, then that's okay. And that's true of many of the other HR initiatives I've listed in red on the slide, which are the ones that we've either recently introduced or we're looking to introduce over the coming months. And our experience has been that by highlighting existing practice that is environmentally friendly, this creates a platform for the business to then start to take genuinely environmentally led decisions. So electric company cars, as an example, was mainly an environmental decision, but which in turn has turned out to have commercial benefits. And we're seeing this play out across many of our other departments, where the fact that we've started to identify existing practice as environmentally friendly is acting as a catalyst for them to take environmentally driven decisions. So if I just, in conclusion, if I just turn to the lessons we've learned, and I won't go through all of them, but I just want to highlight 3 in particular. So, sorry, if you can just go back, Eleanor. Thank you. Firstly, and I'll be honest, my perception of governance is it's not the most exciting subject in the world. But from our perspective, being required to introduce the governance structures where management are held accountable for environmental matters was probably the single biggest catalyst for change in our organisation. One, because it ensures that there is ownership, but secondly, because the management team quite quickly start to realise that if they have a positive approach to the environment, that makes them look good. And most managers want to look good across an organisation. I think the second lesson I would highlight is that if you can frame existing practice in environmental terms, that creates a platform on which you can build. And I think certainly in our organisation, there is a role for HR to play to lead the way by reviewing its own practices in that context. And finally, I think the more that we as HR can discuss and communicate environmental issues, the more it becomes part of the way we do business. And then inevitably it becomes a priority issue across the organisation. And again, that's what we've seen throughout Alliance Medical over the recent months. And that was all from me. Thank you. Thank you for your time. And I'm not sure if I'm handing back to Tony or if I'm handing on to Victoria.
Yeah, grab it back there. Thank you, Pete. That was great. Just in terms of sort of setting out that really big picture stuff, in terms of some of the driving background for your organisation, and specifically your part of the organisation, which came from the new arrangements and the new governance that was sort of put in place, and then channeling that down into individuals. Individuals feel under pressure. So some great stuff that I saw from that, but I just want to really leave 5 minutes or so if anyone has any questions to ask, rather than me, because I've got plenty to say. But are there any questions there just on anything that Peter said that anyone would just like to unmute themselves and just sort of fire out to us? Just tell us who you are and any questions there. Okay, looks like there's a question in the chat there. E-recruiting, one of the drivers for the right meaning of the agenda for distance, hand in hand proposal.
Yes, is the answer, the simple answer. I think, COVID has been a catalyst for change in many ways. And e-recruiting is one of them. So whether that's e-recruiting in the sense of using a recruitment, a digital recruitment system for things like invitations and offer letters and referencing, etc., but also in terms of remote interviewing, which I think is now the norm. I think it's very unlikely we're going to put someone on a train to travel from London to Warwick to our head office for an interview when we can do a Teams call. I think the digitization piece is big, and I read something today about green paper slips, and I had no idea what a green paper slip was. The green pay slip, sorry. I had no idea what a green pay slip was, but it means an electronic pay slip. Well, we've been doing that for years. We introduced it for cost reasons, but that example of digitization is also positive from an environmental perspective, which is a good thing.
I think, sort of picking up on that, I think it is good as part of your journey, you've sort of recognised some of the things that your organisation was already doing. And I think that that's part of the journey, because it will then just sort of show people that it's not a case of starting from scratch. It's then got to lead to further, because it can't just sort of stop at the company saying, oh, well, we can identify all these things as being green. Aren't we doing well? It's a case of we're on the journey. What's the next step in the route, I would suggest.
I think it's a typical change model. If you can identify multiple small ticket decisions and initiatives and things that you do across your company that have an environmental benefit, whether they were put in place for environmental reasons or not, if you can identify lots and lots of small things, that ultimately will make it easier to make some of the big ticket decisions around environmental issues, because it just becomes part of the conversation and part of the debate and part of the consideration.
Yeah, I think so.
Tony, can I just pick up one that Louise has put in? Sorry, it's gone now on the chat. She's asked a general question about, has anyone embedded climate change within their recognition program? I think just back to Pete in a way, because I think I glanced on one of the slides, something about reward policy. Did I see that, Pete, or have you got any comments on bringing climate change into recognition?
So a couple of questions. I think there's a question just coming in the chat as well around measurement, the importance of measurement. We found with all ESG type issues, if you rely on the goodwill of your management team, of your leadership team, you don't necessarily make the progress that you want to make as an organization. So we found two things. So one is you can't just rely on people doing initiatives, because what will happen is you get to the end of the year and people will come up with a list of things they do, but nothing's necessarily moved forward. You have to have initiatives, and you have to have measures, and you have to have targets, because it's only through measuring things that you can demonstrate progress. And that then ties into the performance management and the reward piece, because certainly within a listed organisation, the expectation of our investors is that we start to include ESG issues in management performance contracts. And therefore, in this financial year that we just concluded, all of our senior execs had an objective to develop a regional equality strategy with measures and targets. For the next financial year, they will all have an objective to develop a sustainability strategy with initiatives, measures and targets.
Yeah.
And what we found with the equality piece was you make an awful lot more progress by having it in targets than if you had not had it in targets.
I think it's that old adage that what gets measured gets done.
Yeah. I think some of it comes from the South African culture and their organisation. Clearly, with the background and legacy and history in South Africa, they have to demonstrate progress against the ESG issues in a very a very empirical manner. They have certain targets to fulfill. Yeah. And that flows through down to the rest of the group.
Great. Okay, well, I would suggest then, thank you very much for that. Thank you for questions as well. So at this point, if we perhaps move on to Victoria's presentation, and then again, with a bit of luck, we'll be able to take another few questions at the end of that. So over to you, Victoria.
Okay, well, listen, thank you for asking me first and foremost, and hopefully some of the bits and pieces I cover off might be useful. I hope so. I'm certainly no guru on any of this. I think a bit like Peter, we've sort of developed things as we've gone along to an extent. But if I tell you a little bit about the company I work for, it says BD Arthur Mayer. You've probably never heard of us, I suspect, because we trade in the UK under one of our brand names, Baxi. But we've got lots of different products in there, Remea, Potterton, Heat Ray, and so on. But essentially what we do is manufacture boilers. So gas guzzling, carbon rich boilers that you see in the press all the time as, the bane of the green agenda, really. And interestingly, 30% of the world's carbon emissions come from the heating and cooling of buildings. So clearly we're in the thick of it from that perspective. And we talk a lot about the energy transition and trying to win that battle, if you like, with some of our competitors. But as you can imagine, built on a very traditional, profit-rich, old school business, and trying to transition into a company that's providing heating solutions to help us stay warm, cool, comfortable, and so on. But it's a commercial imperative really that we get with it on the sustainable front. So what I'm going to sort of explain perhaps in the next few slides is a bit about some of the things that we've done, mainly across the UK, where we employ circa 1,300 employees, 2 big sites, Warwick head office, Preston manufacturing. So next slide, thank you. So one big thing that I think has been very helpful, driven by group, our management board, is our values. So you can see on the screen, pretty straightforward, nothing earth-shattering about them, but they're deceptively simple, I would suggest. And the one on the right, if you can see it, says sustainable future. We care about shaping a better future. And that's all about innovation, continuous improvement, and making sure we have a future, that we are sustainable. So it's a pivotal element about who and what we are, underpinning the whole business. And I think that's been quite helpful from my perspective, because what I notice when people come for interview is they're terribly interested in what we're doing with our range of different products. So we are moving from circa 90% of our products being boilers, which is pretty much all of the business, towards a future in the next couple of years, 2025, a quarter of our products will be air source heat pumps. so run through electrification as opposed to gas, and also having gas boilers that can convert to running off hydrogen. So 12% of our business in the next couple of years. So it's a massive imperative, a massive transition for us both in terms of routes to market, skills, how and what we produce and where. There's a shift around our understanding and culture and education for the business just in the UK, let alone internationally. So it's a driving force, and it's embedded in our culture and our values and who we want to be and who we are. Next slide. So I'm sure you've all seen similar things in your own companies or in the press or written about it in various journals, but 3 big megatrends that are certainly impacting us as a company. Energy transition I've talked about, increasing acceleration around digitization. So a lot of remote customer interaction, tech savvy customers, they demand more convenience. There's all the stuff around flexible working, hybrid working from home that we've all seen. And then of course the shift in economic power. And by that I mean, geopolitical competition as the market barriers to get into the market rather. We've got this challenge around inflation, global supply chain bottlenecks that I'm sure, again, we've all witnessed and seen. So that's the sort of the environment that we're in. And again, if I move to the next slide, some of the things that we've tried to do, because sustainability is such a huge topic, is take some of those obvious UN sustainable development goals. I'm sure you've all come across them, and there are 17 to choose from. And we've tried to whittle it down to the ones at the bottom and split them out into social impact and environmental footprint, and to try and make it a little bit more manageable for ourselves as a business. So looking at health and well-being, education, gender equality, all of which, HR and professionals have a huge opportunity to impact on, but also around, managing our environmental footprint. So, responsible consumption, climate action, sustainable cities and communities, so heat networks, all the different products I've mentioned, and providing affordable and clean energy. So clearly we have opportunities across the board. And then really just to sort of tell you a little bit about what we've done locally in the UK, if we go to the final slide, that's just a sort of an overview of our strategy between now and 2025, what we want to achieve. But in terms of the UK business, I mean, huge opportunity and huge impact from my area. So, referencing and echoing what Peter's done, we've done a load of work around electrification of our company car and van fleet. So we've got 300 engineers on the road, or, we've got 4 or 5 electric vans now out and about. We've got a new list of company cars, all of which are electric or hybrid. So all of the sales force, again, 100 strong in that group, who are now going to have no choice but to go into an electric vehicle. So, big sort of shift in our strategy. And we've got, all the usual charging points that we've implemented at our different sites. But just on the real estate side of things, we've integrated, consolidated a number of our key locations to end up with the 2 big sites I mentioned. So, that has had a massive input on our carbon footprint, because people are simply not, moving around and visiting different locations all the time. It's something fairly obvious, but it's having an impact. Diversity and inclusion is a big part of this for us. So we've now, I'm pleased to say, got 50% of our board are female. It's not just about gender, it's about, inclusivity, it's about fairness. But we've devised a basic strategy and created a small steerco to then create employee networks. That, to me, is part of our impact on the sustainability agenda. The values I've mentioned, which embed everything we do from a behavioural point of view. But I think the big task that we've got, that we are starting on, is the move towards this, broader portfolio of products, moving away from traditional gas boilers to air source heat pumps in particular. Hydrogen is a longer journey, probably 10 years hence, but it's around technical training. It's around our sales capability to be able to sell these different solutions. It's around training our installer base, installers that install the heat pumps, their customers to us, but they also need to be trained. So we are providing them with accredited air source heat pump installation programs, for example, all of which is training, learning and development opportunities, as well as obviously bringing in new talent, apprentices, graduates, and we are developing our new centre in the Midlands to create that new generation of trained people to be able to install, maintain, and support our customers with this new set of products. So, I think one big thing that's particularly worked well for us is we created a sustainability committee about 2 years ago now, driven by employees, cross-functional, taking some of those UN SDGs, whittling them down, and to Peter's point, putting in measurable targets around waste, no lost time accidents, improving the diversity of our demographics, electrification of our company cars and vans, etc. And packaging is a big part of this, more sustainable packaging. And I think really on an individual basis, just getting the message out there that this is the company we are becoming, and posting stuff on LinkedIn. I do that all the time. We've got a lot of, relatively low level thought leadership stuff, but spreading the word about what we're doing. So it's all encompassing, but to my mind, HR professionals have a huge role in all of this. And it feels fragmented probably from what I've explained, but these elements add up to a bigger picture. And when you tot it up, real estate, cars, D&I, all of the products and supporting the commercial sales team, L&D, they are all part of what we do. So, it's an exciting period for us, but hopefully that's been useful for everybody on the call. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for Victoria. So again, I'll put the same invite out. A few things that I've jotted down, but anyone else on the call this afternoon who'd just like to ask questions regarding that? Come on, I know you're not a shy bunch, really. So just pull that one up there.
Yeah.
Comment from Sonia.
Yeah,
100%. I'd agree with that. I think the talent pipeline, succession planning is definitely a big part of it. And the new generation of people who have the skill set to be able to deliver and maintain and support with our new range of products, for sure. Absolutely. And L&D, it underpins that.
There's something that I've seen recently about, well, in fact, it was from the CIPD Sustainability Guide. It's about introducing that in job descriptions. It's about saying that people should have this underpinning knowledge about sustainability, not just about the technical capabilities, if you like, but the whole area around that. Is that something that you're looking at yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly we reference energy transition in recruitment for sure, because it comes up, especially when you're taking on more senior people, and one of the sort of attractions really is some of the work that is ongoing around our products, and some of the innovation there. But I think job descriptions, definitely it's becoming more in everybody's mindset. I think whether we're driving that specifically and deliberately, I think I would question.
Okay. And that's perhaps a further step. What the question there from Alison, does it sometimes feel overwhelming as a task?
I think you've just got to, a bit like Peter said, I think you've just got to get going and pinpoint some key targets. I mean, we started off with the committee, probably. That's where it began. And we've got 11 sort of sustainability elements within that. So, you know, we've got quite, we spent a lot of time toing and froing, whittling that down. And I think that then, a bit like Peter, created a bit of a framework for us to work towards. And then it's become bigger and bigger and spread out into other areas of the business. And then group have really embraced it. And we in the UK, I would argue, drove that. And then it's appeared in the values. So it's becoming quite a coherent, all-encompassing message, really. And it's got lots of different meanings for different people. But I think it's starting off with just some clear, basic, what are we actually going to do? What can we commit to? How are we going to drive this? And that was the starting point, really. You know, get the cars sorted out. You know, let's reduce all of our lost time injuries. Let's try and, you know, minimize the amount of, you know, or get 50% of our packaging recyclable, you know, in the next sort of 12 to 18 months. And we've done it, you know.
Yeah. It's good. And a couple of points, I'll just sort of finish this off. One, again, going back to Pete's comment, that sometimes, well, quite often, doing the right thing is also commercially sensible as well. So to me, that sounding like, you know, the recycling of packaging is something, by the sounds of it, and I don't need a confirmation there, that has got to be something that is more effective use of resources. The second point I'll just make, what you said there, as a contrast to actually Pete's situation. As I understand it, Pete sort of was quite driven from the top of the organisation down in terms of saying, you know, thou shalt do these things and what are you doing? Whereas as you've explained it, Victoria, in the structure with BDR, you've got the UK operation, and that is taking steps on its own and then influencing upwards.
Yeah.
And I think this is the part that I would, if you like to come to next then. And I'll thank you very much for the contribution there, Victoria. And if you chip in later, that'd be smashing, but thank you for that. My thinking here is that what we can't do, as Boris Johnson came out with today, is sit on our hands. It is a case of actually taking action. And what we can't do is to say, I can't take any action because them up there aren't doing anything. I think what we've got to do is to actually pick things up and say, whatever our level within an organisation, what can we actually do about things? So, Eleanor, if I can invite you to bring up the next slide, please. Now, there's a phrase that you might have heard over the last week or so. Blah, blah, blah. Is it a case of just being a talking shop? Is the COP conference just a talking shop? And some people might feel that that is the case at the moment. But I think, again, we've got to take things into our own hands. We've actually got to say, we can't wait for someone else to do something about these things. We as HR professionals are in a unique position within many organisations. And we might not be sitting at the very top of the organisation, but we have significant influence. So, Helena, are you in a position to open up breakout rooms and just give people a chance to discuss a question over the next
Yeah, I've got them set up.
Fantastic.
7 rooms. How long are we going to go?
Fantastic. Let's have a see. If I can perhaps invite, well, let's see if we can say have 9 minutes, and that will take us to 7 o'clock. And the question I'll pose to people in the breakout rooms is, what can you do next on the road to sustainability within the organisation? So this is not about what the organisation can do. This is not about saying it's too big, we can't influence things. Just on the basis of some of the things we've talked about tonight and some of the things you might share with each other in those rooms there, what can you actually do? And if we can talk about that for 8 or 9 minutes, we can then come back and very quickly take sort of the best point or the best couple of points from each of those groups, and that will hopefully share some more knowledge between us. So this is moving beyond blah, blah, blah into actual action. What can you do? So Eleanor, let's,
Right,
yeah,
the rooms are open.
Yeah, okay. So if people want to join the rooms, and we'll see you back again in about 8 minutes time.
And just
Recording in progress. Lovely jubbly. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming back. That just hopefully gave you 10 minutes or so just to chat with your colleagues, just to find out a bit more about what is happening in different organisations. I've only got about 6 or 7 minutes, but I'd just like to dib in, if you like, to those conversations, take out some of the good stuff that you were talking about in those meetings. We're down to sort of 23, so I'm not going to do anything formal now. But please, just someone jump up, unmute yourself, and just sort of share some of the best bits of what you've heard or what you've been saying over the last 10 minutes or so, please.
Lady, it's Trisha. Hiya.
Hi, Trisha, yeah.
So we had quite an interesting discussion with our group. Things from automating processes, so using OneNote instead of workbooks. Bridget said as well, attending work when necessary. So, which great luxury to have, I would say. So, like that. Automating systems departments. I mentioned we've just moved to DocuSign for all HR documents. We've committed to going paper free before the end of next year. So lots of scanning to do next year. Yeah. Company cars. Our group has introduced a policy where it makes it more expensive to move away from the sort of hybrid or electric cars. Okay. So to fit into the bandings, and also from a tax perspective as well, it works out better. I mentioned we had a green committee a few years ago. I'm conscious and keen to start that up again. Yeah. Bridget also said they've actually introduced sustainability champions, so job descriptions to go with that, formal qualification as well. So we're all quite interested in finding out more on that. Yeah. And Helen said as well, her company is fully behind it. So they've got it on their company website and stuff as well, working towards that. So I thought that was really useful. Lots of ideas to share. Yeah, smashing. Great stuff. I'll just give people just a very quick starting point for more education qualifications. What's it called? Carbon literacy. There's a very quick and easy qualification that people can get that just really just gives people the basic of what's happening in the environment there from the Carbon Literacy Trust. And that's something, again, one of the tips I picked up from CIPD, and I've taken that forward for myself. But I think the more we know and more we educate ourselves about these issues, the more we're able to help and spread that information around the companies. And carbon literacy do training in company. Relatively short and sharp sessions that will help people to gain that knowledge. So thank you for that. Again, I'll open up the mic. Anyone else who wants to jump in just to share their conversations, please?
Hi, I'm Tony. So hi, Tony again. So Sonia and I were having a quick chat because neither of us are currently sort of working in HR as such. We work in support networks with HR, and we had quite a fascinating chat. So there's quite a lot of things that companies do. So I currently work for the Very Group, and we sadly went paperless when we opened up our new fulfillment centre here in next to East Midlands Airport, and it was, that's how it's always been. We don't have notebooks, we use sticky notes, etc. on our computers, but we forget the basic things sometimes. So as an example, this morning I was explaining that I was having to Google where to recycle printer cartridges, and actually we can look at bigger pictures, but it's also good to look at smaller pictures at the same time as well. So sometimes going back to the basics. We have over the road a new warehouse that's opening up that will be the first carbon carbon neutral warehouse in the area, and it will be really fascinating to understand what we can take from them and work with them as partners, to see what we can then implement here within our own warehouse as well. And from a HR perspective, you know, our HR is forefront in driving everything, whether it be employee engagement, you know, values, etc. You know, that's where we would then step in. So, and I can't really speak for Sonia, but I think the pair of us are in roles where we would then be supporting to make sure that, you know, HR are actually doing those things and we can go with them. So yeah,
no, good stuff. One of the you know, over my learning and development days, one of the models that is very simple but one that I keep reminding people over, and that's the sort of the core and the middle ground and the outer ground. The outer ground is the stuff that we cannot change. That's the world as it is. Within that, there's some stuff that we can actually influence, and within that, there's stuff that we can control. Our own actions, we are responsible, we can do those things. And I think where to focus people's attention is not on the stuff that we can't change. We can moan and complain about all sorts of things. We need to think, what are the actions that I'm responsible for and I can do? And as you indicated there, Tony, even if you can't, even if you're not in the power to do those things, you can start influencing. You can have the conversations with people. You can inspire people. You can show people stuff. Hey, I've just come across this. This is interesting, or whatever it takes just to get those conversations going. So no, that's smashing. I think that's good. Okay, room for one more. I think if I've got anyone else that just wants to chip in, just with anything that we've not talked about so far in this little review. John, I think you're right. It's everyone's devastated over England and the cricket. So let me move on at that particular point then. There's sort of, I know we're actually going down in numbers here, so this isn't going to be as effective as it would be otherwise, but I do have a poll for those of you that are attending tonight, and with a bit of luck, Eleanor will be able to bring up that poll. And it's really just sort of a reflection on the session that we've had this evening, and it's that move from the blah, blah, blah. Can we actually get into doing actions? And it's just a case of saying, has this event actually given you some food for thought? Has it given you some things that you can take away and consider doing within your organisations? Oh, I'm seeing the answers coming in here, and this is looking good. This is looking good. Yeah, good stuff, good stuff. Yeah. Okay,
shall I share it now?
You share it, yes, because I'm seeing it build up here. But yeah, okay. I think we've done a bit of a job here tonight. Then I think we've taken people on a bit of a journey, and you know, do you know what? That's all we can keep doing. I can't control things. Hopefully, I can influence things. And as John said, I'll push for this session. I'm very grateful for the CIPD for letting me sort of pull this together. And it is that case of moving on from action. It's moving on from the blah, blah, blah. It's actually appreciating that people are taking action at the moment and that we could actually probably all take more action. It's getting ourselves educated. It's finding out about what is actually happening here. So Eleanor, I think I've got one final slide that I'd like to bring up. Yes, please.
We go.
Blah blah blah. So for me, this is my last slide, and then I'll just hand over to John. Whilst Tony in our syndicate room was very gracious to reckon that I was young, I'm sort of more towards the end of my career than the start of the career. And you know what? Probably, fingers crossed for me, global warming. You know, is it going to have a huge impact? Well, I think it's going to have an increasing impact. And certainly one of my drivers for doing this is not thinking about myself. I've got 3 great nieces and nephews. I have Tilly, I have Eddie, and born about a month ago, a youngster called Finley. And they're all under 5. And it's the world that they're going to grow up in that is sort of my driving force for this. It's the world that we're all handing on to those children. Tilly, Eddie, Finley are my drivers. I'm sure each of you will have your own drivers for sort of taking some action and actually doing things. I hope this has just been a sort of a stepping stone along the route for you there. So with that, I will hand over to John just to close us down. We're nicely on time here.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Well, just kind of taking your drivers a little bit further in terms of career, I'm certainly at the end of, well, one of my major careers. Early in another career as well, early-ish in another career as a grandfather. So that's a whole different ball game with my 4, 6, and 8-year-olds grandchildren and getting involved. Difficult to summarize really in terms of, for me, so much has come out of it. Some of the words I've written down are strategy, values, embedding, influencing, commercial success, and also came in our group a little bit, what's the drivers of your business as well? What context do you work in? Because there was a bit of me thinking, I mean, I wouldn't, in terms of Victoria and her company, classic burning platform, because if they didn't do anything, they wouldn't have a business very shortly. Louise, who was in the group I was talking to in the breakout group, works for local authority, highly driven by political agendas. So if the politics is currently about environmental issues, they'll be on the agenda. So it was great to me it's on the agenda. I think the other side of the coin is the bit you made, Tony, about where does your power come from? And the example for me of that is Greta Thunberg. What power did she have? Has she got any influence? I think so. You might debate it, but there is influence there. So wherever you are in the organisation, I'm very conscious when we put up HR directors, people saying, "Oh, it's all right for them," kind of thing. But wherever you are in the organisation, you can have influence one conversation at a time. And my final quote, I think, is a good old one that I've had around for years and years and years, is think global, act local. And that is the old one. I can't remember whose quote it was, but it's in one of the early eco books. And that for me would be it. So thanks to all the people who take part, Tony for driving it, Eleanor for driving the machines and keeping us on track. Pete and Victoria, I thought their presentations were tremendous. They're stuck to the time. Thank you so much for that. If you're still there, I appreciate that, because it's not always the case on these kind of events. So that's brilliant. And most of all, for you guys who've taken part, I think the furthest away is we had somebody from Madrid. So hopefully they'll be having a nice evening in Spain after this is finished. And watch out, you'll get details of the slides, etc., and a survey monkey. And we will be running more meetings along these lines, I'm sure. So have a good evening, whatever you're doing, however sustainable you are going to be this evening. Enjoy, and thanks again.